What's up, folks? How's it going? Welcome back. Part 2 in full effect. Got a really clear shot on the back porch, 12:18 a.m. Eastern. So the deal with the penumbral lunar eclipse is that, it's not a full-on lunar eclipse that you would really see, even though there is some shadowing. It's only at about 30%. So really, personally, I've never seen a penumbral eclipse. I've actually captured a couple of lunar eclipses, and even actual full-on lunar eclipses, are really tough to capture. So I don't know if we'll really see anything necessarily, but it's supposed to go till about 1:15, and we got the moon view, so we'll be able to take a look at it from a very clear perspective. That's all I really know about it. And the thing is, it's not like a full-on Earth 100% eclipse. It's 30%, so it's only going to be a small portion that's going to be slightly unilluminated or shadowed. I'm getting crazy latency here, so try and readjust to the microphone on this other setup. Welcome back, everybody, and let's see, got Mary, got Frank, Jedi Princess Kimmy, Bart, Genghis 9 NGC, Caveman Smash, what's happening? Yeah, that's my take on the penumbral eclipse. We'll be able to see it here if it happens. Let's just keep looking at it, and let's jam. Hoo-wee. Already the 5th of July. Thankfully I had a little bit of coffee left. Threw a ton of ice in there, so it's mostly ice, but it's this little sip of coffee. I'll toast to y'all. Still got fireworks going. And this room is so much cooler. I'm gonna keep the door kind of halfway closed so I can just chill. Look at that nice 100% full moon in July. 2020 has been crazy, and it's probably going to get even crazier. Honey, it ain't over. So got got Saturn and Jupiter following up, and that'll just cross a certain threshold and I'll be able to see it. What's happening, Sabian and Astrolabium and Ellie Wynn, the crescendo. And Miguel, you're finally here. Miguel, you weren't on the last one, right? Everyone was saying hello to you, and I don't know if you were there. So let me know if you were there in spirit. Sorry about the microphone discrepancy with the volumes. I don't mean to make it pop, but it seems so inconsistent. I'm gonna go see if I can't get the filter, make it a little bit better. Alright, before the next song, just hopping in to say what's up. I see Nicole Reed, welcome, and Kat, hello, and NGC, and who else? Whoever else is joining, thanks for coming to part 2. Rolling along here with our perfect 100% fully illuminated moon, our sister planet. We got some fireworks in the background. Beautiful night tonight. Sending out good vibes to all the lurkers as well. Let's do some Dreamboat. Get the energy going. It's still Saturday, right?
From the heart, I know, no lie. I've been thinking about you all night. Why? No why. I've been waiting for your white light. No why. I've been thinking that you should be mine. So call me up. Oh, you Je t'attends, mon amour, grâce à tu es ainsi dans le monde que la même semaine, achetant la péternelle avec mon ensemble billets. Je suis là même tout en avant l'année chaque jour. Je t'attends, mon amour, avec les mecs sans agréver. Et c'est mon âme magnétique, c'est l'amour magnétique, c'est mon amour magnifique.
Alright, so I'm just testing the sketching tool. I tried to figure out how to use paint so I could actually fit the whole image in, but it's a little bit tough actually, because I thought I could fit it, but trying to draw when it's zoomed out like that, even though I can fit the whole screen, is actually difficult because I can't see the cursor. So that didn't work exactly right. Regardless, hopping in here to say what's up to Frey Fish. How's it going? Welcome back. And glad you're chatting. Says, yeah, I like how you do your own music, trying to get into myself after endless problems via COVID. Yeah, man, it's been crazy. Or girl. But yeah, music has really kept me sane. Caveman Smash, what's going on? I had an awesome experience before this moon. What was it? 5 little owls in my garden chilling on a cactus. Wow. It started to bloom the nest day up to this moon. Well, either way, owls are super cool and a good sign, good omen. So 5 owls is quite a blessing. Also saying what's up to I am High Degree. How's it going? Says, where's the moon? The moon is right here. It's in the southern skies. 100% illuminated. Who else? We got Maskilla. What's happening? Welcome. Freyfish says, got as far as some beat sound type apps, but they seem to be free for use for music, yet feels too easy to sell it as a beat. Do you want to put lyrics on it to create for myself mainly? Yeah, so it's always good to just start with like a sampling program, and then kind of move your way to Ableton or Logic and start kind of putting together more elaborate sound layers. I know what it's like when you have too many tools and it feels like cheating, but really that's why you kind of have to either sing or hum over something, make it your own, and then maybe play an instrument over all the electronic parts. And so that kind of puts a signature on it, even if it's like a very simple bass line or like a couple of guitar chords or even drums. You can beatbox, you could just put one type of signature that's organic or two, and then the rest can be all those kind of samples and electronic stuff, and then it kind of mixes it. Am I drawing my woman? I'd like to, I want to show you this amazing scene, which is almost like a fisheye lens into a world, but I have to rotate the image so that, let me see, I just have to figure out how to draw it. I'll focus on that for a moment. new jams. Let's do it.
watch your heart, oh devil and the saint, and know that the days spent beyond the reed, even if I feel incomplete. Slow distance we flow, difference exists, difference without. I hold you up to be, I hold you up to the light you reach till you need oh like me. So I form a bridge before we hit the ground. So I form a bridge before you hit the
Yo. So, yeah. That was a little bit of this track called Dreamy. Dream Me. While I sketched out the lady in the moon. So this is something, this sketch, I think is original. I haven't seen it anywhere. And for me, it's like, now granted, there are a little bit of artistic expression, artistic like liberties I take with the arm, but for me, this kind of fish bowl of this woman trapped in a garden with the sun gleaming behind her has always fascinated me because it takes over the whole moon surface altogether, and you can kind of fit in the city in the background, the sun, and the garden with the stones, and her walking along this path. She's not very pretty, but she's definitely got that black dress with the white belt, and yeah. I got it in right before the clouds rolled through. Ooh, we got some puffy clouds coming in. So just want to say thanks for hanging out and watching while I drew that, and I rotated the camera so I could get that view. Let's see, what's going on, Ryan and NC? Kat says, I'm going to see that every time I look at the moon now. I honestly, like, if you do see it, just like see if you find any more objects in there. Ellie Wynn says a square sound garden even, which I love. And what's up, Morgan Ellis and Debbie Carson and whoever else is just joining the crew tonight. Great to have everybody on this amazing full moon. We'll check out some Jupiter and Saturn shortly. Did you see that last show? I was showing a bit of Europa and Io doing that very close dance. I think they'll still be that close. We'll check it out shortly. More tunes up in here. Electric Universe, Astronomy, Rides Again. I think, also let me know what you think about this. I was thinking about, I have so many videos on this channel, and a lot of them are starting to get buried because like I can't even find them. And you have to go back pages and pages to kind of go to the early shows. I was thinking about starting up a new channel and maybe putting TakeBackSpace as the archive. So let me know what you think of that. Maybe Electric Universe Astronomy or something like that. Been thinking about it this past week just because I was like, man, I keep telling people to go back to the playlists and the archives, and those videos are just rotting. And I understand why, because like 500 videos deep is like a real trek to get to. Fireworks. All right. What up, somebody somewhere? And make our country great again. And Esoteric Gold, what's happening? And Just K Today, what's happening? Everybody's here. All right. hop in here for a sec to say what's up to new folks or old folks who've never chatted before. What's up, Levins Lovato from Arkansas? How's it going? Welcome. And Soup Fog. I'm trying to think. I think I've seen you before, but anyway, welcome. Says just make another channel and stream to both for a while. Chances are more viewers doing it, right? It's a lot of work. So I think I have to get like 100 subs, or is it 1,000 subs to be able to stream? No, probably 100 subs. I don't know. I'll think about it. I want to come up with a good branding solution for it. Something interesting. I think like TakeBackSpace was more a little bit protesty, a little more angsty, and I think I took back space for myself. So now I kind of want to talk about plasma, cosmology, and consciousness, and still do the moon and music, of course. I feel like maybe electric universe astronomy is good. Nobody's really doing that, but we'll see. Thanks for the thoughts, though. I appreciate it. Oh, let me doodle those hexagons on the moon while I chat with y'all for a moment. What's up, Victor Morrison? How's it going? Yeah, so I tightened up the contrast a bit, and it's looking crazy good. So nice. We've been blessed for the past few weeks just with amazing views, but especially the last couple of nights on the moon has been crazy. So let's, I got my paint program. I'll have to draw the lady in the moon one more time later, but I'll erase her for the time. And then let's turn on the paint. Boom, boom, boom. All right, let's talk about some hexagons and pentagons first. Mare Crisium. That's one of the first ones that I saw. I was like, man, this doesn't look circular. This looks hexagonal, and it's kind of got a dirty edge, but it really does look that way. And then I noticed Proclus, Proclus, this very bright white crater or feature, and it has this kind of tri-star effect coming off it, very specifically geometric. And then you'll notice that Mare Tranquillitatis, Sea of Tranquility, right here, it's got this hexagonal shape. Then bordering on Tranquility, you got Sea of Serenity, Mare Serenitatis, which is more of a pentagon. And you'll see that in molecular structures, there's a lot of this type of stuff. The idea is that right here, this boundary layer is a fused kind of hyperboloid. You got the plane of inertia, and you've got the magnetic field lines. Same thing here. Let me just adjust this. So in a way, Proclus is like where the plasmoid would be, or the Z-pinch in the middle of this hyperboloid. So if you've ever seen, actually I have images that I can just show, like we're getting clouds, but so this would be the field lines, whoa. This would be the Birkeland filaments going through, and so it's just recursive fractal systems. This is the torus and the hourglass. So let me hide that. Did we really get full-on clouds? Crazy. Oh, it's just a few. It's just a few. Yo, what's going on, Kevin H. and Alicia Evans? How's it going? So if you're new to the channel, the stuff that I talk about is electric universe based, and more so about lunar geology and how the moon was formed, captured, where all the craters are from, you know, how the features make sense within a certain type of physical paradigm as opposed to a purely mathematical paradigm. So right now, if you looked up formation of the moon, you'd see this kind of animation of a 4 billion year old accretion disk around the Earth after the Earth was hit with a large object the size of Mars, let's say, and formed all these piles of rubble spinning, counter-rotating, let's say, around Earth, and then ultimately fusing together to form a molten ball. And then about 3 billion years ago, these giant meteoric storms passed by the moon from somewhere and created all these giant mares and craters that we see, most of them. So the ones I just showed you, like Sea of Serenity, Tranquility, Crisium, Mare Crisium. This is, what's this? Mare Fecunditatis. Let me just move this thing. Mare Fecunditatis. And Mare Fecunditatis is interesting because it's partially hexagonal, but it's got nested kind of diamonds going over it. It's very geometric, though. You do have 90-degree angles. This is Langrenus crater, an elongated sort of hexagonal shape. There. It's very similar to the island kind of plateau underneath Kepler, all the way over here. There's this kind of elongated hexagonal shape. You got the diamond shape underneath Aristarchus up here with the crater Aristarchus on the corner, which is almost like Posidonius on the rim of Serenity, Proclus on the rim of Crisium. You got Langrenus on the rim of Fecunditatis. There's this whole recursive fractal nature to the shape of the geometry on the lunar surface, up, including these very specific, central peaks, chains of craters on the rims of larger craters, and what a lot of people don't say is the craters on the rims of larger mare, which I've never really heard anyone talk about. It's so specific. Let's see. Take back electric astronomy. I like that. Tycho's rays looking bright, bright. Awesome. Copernicus as well is like the human iris. So, yeah, did I save these images? I have some images that I want to share, but I'm just reading some of the comments here. Ellie Wynn says, maybe having 2 channels gives you the chance to work at 2 canvases at the same time. I don't know, I feel like just starting something fresh, just continuing the show as is, but just like, I don't know, maybe just completely continuing it and just like making TakeBackSpace an archive would be the easiest for me, I guess. Mostly because I feel like I try and do the best job at every episode or every stream. I try and like keep everything at very high quality, regardless of like what it looks like or whatever it's called, Levins Lovato said, I've never looked at the moon in this manner. Wow, you've changed your perspective on this. That's awesome. If that, it sounds like you're being sincere. You've got some of the best shots of the moon. I take it that you're being sincere. That's awesome. I'm happy to share this. Please ask any questions you want. I've spent a lot of years doing it, so opinions are my own, and I'm happy to explain them and kind of, fundamentally, a lot of it comes from research here, but also looking at people who do laboratory experiments where they zap clay and wet soil and all these different types of materials with electric discharge arcing, and they create all these features that we see on the moon. And then there was a whole proponent of scientists throughout the last 100 years who've suggested, not a whole proponent, let's say like 5 to 10, have suggested that the moon's surface was created by electrical scarring. And then popular science says it's all meteoric through this heavy bombardment phase like billions of years ago. So it's just really those two. Popular science says volcanism or impact. Electric universe says electric scarification and or electric weathering of the moon. So I feel like it's a really good line of study, something that we can look into at the same time as speculate and test. Esoteric Gold says the principles of the electric universe take time to soak into your brain, but once they do, there's no going back. The picture becomes very clear. It's really true. There are a lot of different aspects of it, but it's one of those things that's very much like a tool. Once you understand electrical interaction and how powerful it is, then you can derive assessments of the world through your own analyses. And that's the huge difference between electric universe and many other conspiracies and theories. Let's see. Alicia Evans says, I'm down with the EU. Awesome. Okay. Let me take a little break and drink something and sketch some more of these. Let's look at Tycho for a second. Chewing on ice. Yeah, Tycho's looking crazy. So when I first started looking at the moon, I saw Tycho, of course, right here. And I looked at this right after, and I tried to find some research online to see like what this was. Question mark. And I really couldn't find any good papers or talks about it. And so for a lot of years, I've just been looking at it and trying to understand, like how something like this is formed. Why do these parallel rays look like they're emanating from Tycho crater, but they don't really look like they are. They look like they're kind of, they get cut off right around here. So what's going on with that? Also, Tycho is like 70, 80 kilometers. Then these are something like 300, 400 kilometers long. It looks like somebody took like somebody's finger. This is how I first saw it. It was like somebody, that's a terrible hand, but somebody put their finger and ran it across the surface and smudged the butter. I think that's the most accurate way I could describe it. Kevin H, what's going on, says, have any of the features changed over the years since we've been watching? Not that I've seen personally, and I feel like any of the tiny things that have happened on the surface of the moon, like we don't have the home technology, commercial technology to see that. I bet you that we might be able to see it with like some stuff from the Subaru or Keck Observatory, or maybe the VLT, or the EELT, extra, what is it, extra large telescope, even extra larger. But yeah, no, nothing that I've seen. However, what I would say is that there are references to the moon and Mars being in a kind of dance in Homer or in the Iliad. So within the last few thousand years, people have gone from sort of seeing the moon in a certain way, or potentially having seen the moon be captured or affected by Mars. That could be possible. What's going on, Fantasy Ecstasy? How's it going? I hope that's not the middle finger. No, it was just a terrible drawing. What's up, AK John 74? What happened to the eclipse? Well, we're watching the moon, but I think it was just way too hyped up. a penumbral eclipse is only a portion, and apparently only 30% of the moon is covered, and I think it's happening right now, but it's so subtle that we don't even see it. I'm not sure if you've seen lunar eclipses before, but even like full-on lunar eclipses are barely noticeable unless you have super clear skies and yeah, and you're in a particular area. Okay, so what was I talking about? I was talking about the differences between electric scarification and impact, right? So the moon was a molten ball that was orbiting the Earth, and then it cooled off, and then it got hit by tons and tons of objects through this thing called a late heavy bombardment, which really is speculative. Even the people who believe in this theory say that it's speculative, but essentially what they're saying is that, whoops, I did not want to do that. I did. Right, they're saying giant rocks from space hit and blasted this out. I mean, we're talking about like Mare Imbrium is what, like 600 to 800 kilometers across or more. I mean, these are giant holes. So let's say these are the impact basins, and then they filled up with lava, hot lava, and then it cooled, and then we get the surface of the moon. For like 3 billion years, it just chills out, and this is what we have today, barring some small impacts. What's going on, Lori Stanhope? This is just a shadow, right? This is just a shadow, right? Shadow. This is just a shadow, right? I'm not sure what you're talking about, but the penumbral eclipse, yes, is just like barely at like a 30% shadow on on the side of the moon, but I can't tell which it is anyway because y'all would be able to see it too. So I don't think we can really see the eclipse, but if we could, it would be visible here. Yeah, not going to be super dark, exactly. Yeah, so there's impact theory, and then there's electric arcing, which says, or whatever type of electrical interaction you want to call it, but let's say there are two bodies, and you're having this arcing between, let's say, Mars, right? Or it's Earth, either or. And you get this effect. And so popular science says that no way, no how, there's no electricity that strong in space. And that was the common understanding for a lot of years. But recently, at least in the last 10 years or 20 years, they so-called, mainstream science has acknowledged that there are magnetic ropes and that there's a lot of electricity in space, especially with the Juno missions, noticing up to these massive discharges from Jupiter, up to 400,000 electron volts or something to that order. So they have acknowledged that there's massive electrical discharge in space. So let's say these things are caused by that, almost like the thumbnail I showed. This really changes a lot of things for science, and it changes the age of the moon. It changes how geology happens. It changes the nature of the surface of the moon in terms of like remnant magnetism and mineral content. And like I saw a whole lecture today on the age of the moon, but they're saying that they've already settled that this was the way the moon was formed. So they're making presumptions based on an unproven theory, and then telling the students that, this is how it is. And so it's difficult to break into popular science with these types of theories, but I think one-on-one or one-on-20 or one-on-40, we can kind of spread these ideas and talk about it in a new way and figure out what's going on. So these signatures of electrical arcing are such that they produce geometry. This is the reason there's a hexagon on the pole of Saturn and many other poles. This is the reason you get honeycombs and molecules, and you get the mouth of a leopard, for example. So I'm just going to show you real quick if you haven't seen me do these drawings. But let me pull up an image at the same time. What's up, effed up world? How's it going? Vicky, you made it. Awesome. Nice to see you. Hello, hello. Fantasy says, Moon's origin will never be discovered. I don't know, maybe. Maybe it'll never be discovered, but maybe one day we'll be able to read the electrical aura of the moon and revisualize its history, but maybe not in our lifetime. Oh, so I had this image already pulled up from the other night, but these are the salt flats that naturally formed. And this is so similar to the arrangement that you see on the moon. So right here you have this kind of, several different structures, but one of them right there is like, kind of see the same sort of arrangement as you do right here. Damn clouds. So ridiculous. Oh, effed up world, that's so sad to hear that you lost your kitty. I'll play a song for your kitty. We'll dedicate it. What's her name? If you want to share. Fantasy is saying, let's see, it's impossible. Every theory has been disproven. Well, I don't know if every theory has been disproven. Even saying every on anything in this world is like, who knows? Is that Death Valley? I was looking up was it Ugandan or Bolivian salt flats when Miguel mentioned it last time. Effed up world, did I get a new scope or new camera or both? Well, depends on when you joined last, but I've had this for like 2.5 years. The Sony a6 with the 8-inch scope. Maybe it's just like a good night. It's been very nice, yielding weather. And shout outs to Cupcake. Have a nice journey into the forward ether. I was thinking today, do animals become humans and then humans become more complex fractal creatures? Let's play a Cupcake song. I'll find something nice. So let me hide this for a moment. I'll get back to the geometry. But essentially, the idea is that these hexagons exist throughout nature, and there's nothing weird about them. But if you look up lunar geology, you'll see that it's like languages like impact only, volcanism, cracks in the moon's surface, electrically dead, magnetically dead, very thin atmosphere, no life, maybe water, and the moon has such a rich consciousness and energy, and we feel it here, and yet popular understanding of the moon is so lame. So it's really high time to kind of look back at the moon and focus on its wonder and its amazing surface and what it can teach us. That's a little nutshell. I'm still scrolling here for a song for Cupcake. This one's good. It's called Grown to Like You, which is what happens. We gain attachments, and then we lose them, and then we write songs about it.
theater scenes, no one weirder comes. Good Baron, the soulful speaker, bring me back over telephone lines, running amok in future time. In my space theater scenes, no one lives here and existence has no motives either. Bring me back to your elegant crime, free from jams into your mind. So let's get crazy today. I got some smoke, let's get to talking. I got some love in the air, that's right. I got some love everywhere, that's right. Made up of shadows, swirl of the storm, coals of the night, you are the door. Made up of shadows, I am the storm, cause of the love, you are my light. Made up of shadows, magnetic light. Claws of the force gracefully fall. Made up of shadows.
Okay, so quickly, I think this is probably pertinent to what you're asking. So there's this idea that, how does the Earth cast a shadow, or how does the moon cast a shadow? All these ideas of interplanetary kind of alignments, conjunctions, shadowing, eclipses, gravitational lensing, exoplanet research, basically bending either space-time or bending light. And really, the reason you kind of see these eclipses is because the way we're perceiving is that light is actually diffracted, or at least the perturbation of light in the ether is going through different medium densities. And as it kind of reaches our consciousness, our shell, our perception of optics, it is already bent and gone through different types of densities before it's even hit our eyes. So to me, I feel like there's this idea that things can't happen because you imagine them on the scale that we see them from day to day, like with a tennis ball or a basketball or in a lab experiment. But on a cosmic scale, I would imagine that the fact is, like, I'll give you an example. When I put the scope up, I sometimes have like the window in the way, right? When I show it to you and you can't see anything, it's already like way past. There's a certain point where like the scope is pointed directly at the windowsill, but we're still seeing the planets. And you can kind of see it when I focus and defocus because light will kind of curve along refractive field lines and get to a destination point. And so I feel like this whole kind of idea of like the Earth can't cast a shadow, it can because ultimately when you get this kind of convergence of optical data, the actual so-called light has curved, but it's been refracted and diffracted in different medium densities. So does that make a little bit of sense? I think to me, visually, if I just like put a spoon in a cup of water, you can kind of see how the image is distorted. So to me, that explains a lot of larger things like gravitational lensing, things like optics in space coming at us to these tiny points, when really these stars shouldn't really be tiny points, or at least they're kind of glowing plasmoids, and we see them as tiny points. Like, what is focus? What is vanishing point? These are bigger questions that are more related to like how optics work and how, the Cartesian frame of reference that we have. So if you look at it, actually, I have a kind of idea of how optics work from the perspective of electric universe. So I'm going to just sketch that, and why not go down that rabbit hole? So let's say the moon is our eyeball. All right, let's say the moon's an eyeball, and you've got the front of the eye, you've got the black hole counter space, and you've got all these filamentary lines. So what I think is happening with how the eyeball actually receives information, and the reason it kind of, basically, what do they say? So if you're looking at, let's say there's a tree in space. Well, that's a horrible looking tree. How should I make a tree? There we go. Here's a tree. No, I didn't mean to undo it. Here is a tree. A really weird tree. Space tree. So there's this idea that the space tree gets flipped somewhere at the back of the eye. And you have this upside down tree. So what continues would be this waveform. So on a very small scale, you see, it's just, it continues and it grows. It gets tiny. So when our eyeballs see it, an object has come from space and the light has traveled, or the perturbation in the ether, not light, but light is experienced as a field modality. And so I feel like optics work in this kind of expanding, and so small, what are they, troughs and crests in an expanding wave. And so these are also troughs and crests. So on a much larger scale, you have troughs and crests. So this is how I think optics work. Let's see what the chat says. Effed Up World says space trees seen directly from moon eyeballs. Awesome. Hell yeah. Please save the bees. Smokey would be proud. What's going on? All right, I don't know what I'm reading here, but anyway, this is my thought on optics, is that it's expanding and contracting wavefronts that bring optical information to your eye field. And the eye field is what? The torus. It's a torus with a hyperboloid, which is that same damn geometry, hexagon right there. Damn hexagons everywhere. That's a lot of sketching. Okay. But you know what I'm talking about. It's the same geometry, right? Like our eyeballs are made similarly to planets, wormholes, black holes, whatever you want. You know, if you think black holes fit in a relativistic universe, it makes, you know, way more sense to interpret them through this idea of counter space and space. Much simpler. There's no reason to like even make black holes as complicated as they are. And then field dynamics almost explain everything else. But I've always found optics really interesting because it's one of those things that is either explained extremely poorly or it's way too complicated for people to understand when it comes down to things like, you know, a single photon entering the eye and triggering a series of proteins that stimulate the rods and cones at the back of your eye. But if you really looked at the rods and cones, you'll see hexagonal tubes and conical structures like we're seeing right here. So the rods and the cones in the back of the eye look like a series of fractal noises of these different shapes. It's same thing throughout. And what is a particle? A particle is the same shape as well. So it's itself observing itself at different scales. And clouds. And scene. Awesome. Please save the bees. Yeah, like when I first, like 5 years ago, when I first got into astronomy, I was like, okay, let me look into optics and see on YouTube what is available in terms of like how does the eye work, what is vanishing point, what is focus. So why do you focus a telescope on the moon and also get Jupiter and Saturn and and the stars all come into focus? And if you look that question up, it almost never has a simple answer. It's always this very convoluted question as to how does everything focus at like 15 miles up in the sky. But then, you know, I know there's a whole conspiracy about the sky is fake. There's a glass sky and a projection. But if you think about it in terms of real physics, it would make sense that the focusing point is the first layer of a plasma shell, and then the next layer of focus is another plasma shell, and it's expanding in these wave fronts, which they themselves become much larger cyclical wave fronts that are fractal. And so that's how optics could really work in terms of us being able to see very far into space. Now, further, there is a discrepancy between like how far things are. So I know that there's an entire conspiracy where it's like the moon's like 10 miles away. I'm joking. But I don't think it's that close. But I definitely think that redshift is something that can be reinterpreted. I think that light as a perturbation in the ether could be different in terms of having this universal speed of light and using that to measure the distance to standard candles like Cepheid galaxies. And so using brightness of a star to measure and redshift to measure distance might not be correct, or it might not be accurate in terms of how far those things are. So there's a lot to unpack when it comes to optics, when it comes to redshift, when it comes to, you know, how fields work. You know, what is an eye doing in terms of seeing? And then this idea that the image is flipped seems like almost like a little anecdote. It's like, oh, isn't it funny that your eye flips the image? Ha 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 ha, 2-minute physics. But it is very interesting, like why does it do that? And how does it reinterpret the image? Like, all these things are very important to unpack, and somehow we live in a world where it's like, it's either you're treated like a 5-year-old or you're treated like a crackpot. What do you mean? It's settled science. Okay, Vicky says they're wrong about the redshift. You're right, it can be thought of differently. Well, very simply, following just a few of Halton Arp's works. So Halton Arp was this amazing astronomer who worked at Mount Wilson and put together a whole bunch of galaxies, Seyfert galaxies, quasars, and showed that there was all these different connections between the arms of the galaxies and smaller galaxies and quasars. And he showed that there are connections between objects that shouldn't have a differentiating redshift, and they do. That's very poorly put. But essentially showing that objects with massively varying redshifts seemed connected by spiral arms of a galaxy, which it shouldn't do. So, and he showed that this was much more than a coincidence, and they basically buried him. I mean, not only did they bury him because he died recently, sadly, but and he was never really given his due in his lifetime, but they buried him in terms of his work, in terms of his books, in terms of his lectures. He wrote this book called Seeing Red, which is excellent, and then the other one is a compendium of peculiar galaxies. And so Halton Arp is amazing, and you just, so in a nutshell, what he talked about was, since these objects have different redshifts and they are part of the same system, therefore redshift is a measure of age and not distance, very simply. And so in space, we use standard candles, we use Doppler shift, mass spectroscopy, and to determine distance. So they'll do a mass spectroscope or radio telescope on, let's say, an exoplanet, and they'll measure its redshift, and then they'll put it side by side with a chart, and they'll say this is like 25,000 light years away. And to me, that always seemed a little bit like, what does that even mean? You know, it's so far that you can't even count, and it's based on this strangely combined unit of light, and saying that light, no matter what, always travels at the same speed, which it really doesn't, because things refract very simply. And I think optics are so fascinating. There's so much to unpack, like I said. Mm-mm. Yeah, Effed Up World says eye flips the image and the brain does it again. Yeah, so having these wave fronts, these conical systems flip the image makes more sense than it just, oh, it's the back of your eye, you know? What does that even mean? All right, so we got some color on the moon right now. Oh wait, is that the camera? It's weird. No, that's the filter, okay. All right, there's a little bit of color on the moon, but not as much as that shot right there. Effed Up World is using a Meade ETX 125 to take moon time lapse. That's pretty awesome. Soup Frog says brain is upside down anyway. Please Save the Bees says rocks form hexagonal features according to the rate of cooling from large like Devil's Tower to smaller crystalline hexagon forms in smaller crystals. Hell yeah. Exactly. Exactly. All right, I'm going to take a little break so I can stretch, and why don't we check out some Jupiter, because it's finally hitting my southern point. And we'll get some tunage up in this lunage. What about this one?
So
All right. So I'm going to keep the tracks going here. Some old stuff, but just saying what's up to everybody in the chat. Thanks for hanging out. We got some Jupiter in view, Great Red Storm. We got some Galilean moon action, but seems like the Io and Europa dance didn't last as long as I thought it would. Either way, all good. What's up to everybody new and effed up, and Peter Battle, what's going on, and Mary, good night, and yeah. Let me know if I missed you. This one's called All the Way. What's up, everybody? Let me hop on, quickly talk about this, Nature Man asked me about the banding on Jupiter you think is caused by impacts. Is there theory on the origins? So I moved over to Saturn, but it's the same sort of thing, like the rings, for example, around Saturn, and the bands around Saturn, the planet, or the center core, are a similar type of origin, in my opinion. And I'm not an astrophysicist. I've just studied it for a while, and it seems to me that there's this idea of counter-rotating currents, which essentially air currents and wind currents. This is what drives weather on planets, on Earth, etc. And it seems that not only are the rings around Saturn counter-rotating, but also Saturn itself is counter-rotating. Same thing with the bands on Jupiter. I think the elements arrange themselves according to the fundamental geometry that I was showing, and that I'll show some more. I feel like I can focus on Saturn a little bit better. Give me 1 second. See, it's very interesting. It's rare that you have to change focus. Jupiter was actually pretty much in focus, and now I had to shift it a little bit for Saturn. Anyway, so let me sketch a little bit and show you what I mean. Whoa, still got that sketch going. The eye. Jello, take it easy. Robert Gaia, what's going on? Welcome. All right, sweet. So the idea is that in electric universe cosmology, or electric universe theory, or for me, not a theory anymore, but in the electric universe, there's this idea of planets, stars, humans, particles, everything being along filamentary networks. So, and these networks are almost like neurons in the brain, these kind of networked systems that have tendrils, dendritic arms, and of course the clouds moved in, but it doesn't matter. NASA says these are called magnetic ropes, and they show them, and they're much more complicated. This is a very simplistic version, but Donald Scott from Thunderbolts Project talks about these as a coaxial Birkeland current going through the center of the planet, so Saturn, and this drives, excuse me, this drives the counter-rotating currents on the planet, and similarly on the rings. So the rings, very fine, different elements arranged depending on probably the weight, the mass, sorry. And then these are counter-rotating rings, and that's how they maintain stasis and equilibrium, by being driven by these forces. So what's happening here is that you have these field lines, and Saturn's rings form along the plane of inertia. If you've ever followed Theoria Apophysis, Ken Wheeler's discussion on this and showing the ferrocell and how matter coalesces along this, and then this is all the counter space holding things in matter, and everything around it is counter space, dark matter, antimatter. anti-space. I know I'm saying a lot tonight, just because there's a lot happening. Okay, what's happening here? All right, there's good stuff going on in the chat, but anyway, I lost the view for a moment. I think, let me go and check back and see what's going on, because I think either all the clouds moved in or it's just over Saturn. I'm going to run this track back. This is Strange Frequency. It should have vocals, but it doesn't. It's just one of those instrumentals. Okay, so it cleared up again. Let me quickly go back to the whole diagram and show this why Saturn is basically powered from the outside is the concept. And so these magnetic ropes or Birkeland filaments are connected directly to our sun, the soul. And so because it's connected by these filaments, not only is it inducing charge and creating a magnetic field, which then again itself also makes more of a charge and changes the charge density of the planet as it's moving through space and really creating layers of echoing time. So every frame that we see of Saturn, whatever you want to break it down into, the whole series of those all exist. They just all keep getting imprinted in the ether around us. They never really get lost. So the ether or dark matter is essentially all this black, so-called empty space, but really what it is that it's counter space impinging on space and creating what we see as these geometric structures. So the human body, right? Whoa, that's a weird human body. This is really terrible. Let me try and draw a better stick figure. Because I'm drawing like in paint with a mouse. Okay, that's a little better. Hairless little person, little shoes, pockets. Okay. So the person is connected through filaments as well in a shell. And so when we're seeing, what was I going to talk about? I was basically talking about the fact that, yeah, so counter space is impinging upon the human body, and we are exploding from the inside, oscillating with our hearts and our chakras as conical waveforms, or wave vacuums in a way. We suck in energy and exude energy in the form of imprinting upon plasma. And then, yeah, so how does the skin stay what the skin is? I mean, if you look at your hand, you'll see that there are these dendritic ridges and structures that look just like the lunar surface. And look at your veins and your arm. Like, why do they look like that, if not being the same geometry as we see in space? So that's why Saturn looks like an eyeball. That's why it looks like a whirlpool. And not only that, this geometry, this toroidal hyperboloid, fits over almost everything. I've shown like this looks like the bridge of a nose, and eyeballs are formed on the plane of inertia. But further than that, it's also the fact that at the center of this is where the oscillations create imprints or field perturbations. Okay, what else? Saturn is aware of, or conscious, let's say, of its moons, like Mimas, Tethys, Rhea, Dione, Titan, and I can show that when I switch the ISO, but we couldn't see the surface of Saturn. I can show that, yeah, in a second, but so the moons go along this inertial plane. Saturn is aware of the moons. Same way that our sun is probably aware of Saturn, and I guess the moons are aware of their own little, probably rings or gravitational fields. And this is how things kind of seem to exist in a fractal, like completely fractally recursive universe, a holistic universe. So that's a little bit about Saturn. There is a convergence where, popular science talks about these concepts, but they never really overturn the fundamental thinking behind cosmology, even though they've observed all these events. Case in point, comets or asteroids being rocky bodies versus sublimating snowballs. Okay, what's going on in the chat room? Fibonacci sequence, looks like a cervix, uterus, and ovaries, exactly. It looks like the magnetosphere diagram around Earth. It definitely does. I have that, actually. So I have a whole bunch of thumbnails that I put together to show. here's a pelvis, right? Like, here, let me reset this. I love the way now at the end of the show I'm like getting deep into the science of it. Let me set this anew. Don't save. Give me yellow marker, please. No. Right, so our body is grown along a Birkeland filament, our spinal column, and this looks like a butterfly wing, right? But it's also the hexagons like Mare Crisium and Mare Serenitatis and Sea of Tranquility and Sea of Crises, and then, same sort of thing, hyperboloid, inertial plane, eyeballs, bridge of the nose. What else is there? This is also an apple, right? It's also a butterfly, right? It's also this crater geometry, Our pelvis is shaped that way because literally we're grown along filaments, and these filaments counter-rotate. They pinch everything into these shapes, geometric shapes. So our lungs are basically shaped that way, and the rib cage is mimic of this. So wide, skinny, wide, skinny. Then the arms, wide, skinny. So we're pinched like strings, which is probably the wave fronts or the hyperboloids. Sorry. Going along a Birkeland filament. So we're grown on Earth. Planets are grown in stellar nursery in the presence of a star. Stars are grown in stellar nurseries, but instead of them being disorganized and random, they're grown along filamentary lines. And so this is how we stay connected, and this is what the genetic code is. Let's see. There's a lot going on in the chat. Man, I can barely read all that, but this is what I think. Let me show a different picture here. I think dark matter is just a different word for ether. Cold dark matter, it's all different field modalities of ether density, and I think popular science is not completely wrong about these observations. They use different terminology, and they don't put it all together, obviously on purpose, but they don't put it all together. But magnetic ropes and plasma is part of pop mainstream science. It's just not talked about in the way that, is holistic and makes perfect sense to integrate everything. But cosmic filaments and the local supercluster, the Lina K, and there are tons of different references from NASA, from ESA, from pop mainstream that completely references plasma and electricity in the universe. But it doesn't say like, speed of light is variable, redshift is variable, and might not be distance. There are these big upheavals in astrophysics and cosmology that have to change because they're purely wrong, and it's going to be a tough struggle because I guess everything good needs a good struggle. So Elvis Presley. Let's show a butterfly. And this will work a lot on the moon as well, but very simply, butterfly geometry is because a butterfly is literally grown along a Birkeland filament, like a fork, and then emanates out in field geometry, just like the pelvis, right? But it's also hexagon, or whatever, Platonic geometry. And then there's the hyperboloid at the center, the hourglass shape. But really it's just a funnel of energy coming in from the Birkeland current and energy feeding backwards in terms of frames of reference of past memory. So imprinting as it's going forward on plasma, leaving residue along the Birkeland filament in terms of historical reference of the species. Everybody talks about genetic code and heredity and past lives, and nobody has a clue physically what's going on, but this is sort of how it makes sense. So Saturn itself has a memory of being Saturn. So Saturn, however old Saturn is, it has this field right here of like, I was born. Just like this butterfly has a field, and it remembers when it was just one cell, because that cell created an oscillation in the ether, in the counter space. To be a cell, it must have created that oscillation, because one point oscillates outwards, creates that first shell, and then that first shell feeds back to the source. Source creates another layer, pushes that next layer out, and then it experiences both those layers. This is the bicameral existence that we talk about. Field theory coupled with electric universe explains pretty much everything for me. Especially because you can see it under a ferrocell, but you can see it all, especially in planets, on lunar geology. Like, same thing, like Jupiter is aware of its moons, and then our sun is aware of Jupiter as its child, let's say. It just makes a lot of sense. And then our sun is probably treated as one of many suns in our local cluster, right? And that awareness, that consciousness, think about consciousness in terms of things not intersecting each other. Just the awareness, like if somebody said, is an apple conscious? An apple is conscious enough to not go through another apple when it grows next to it. What makes it not go through the, like, clip, like in 3D when like hands clip a door or close? Why don't apples like go through each other if not for this geometry? It makes like so much more sense than that we're not imagining it. Excuse me. All right, so time for a little break. And I'll go back to the moon for a bit. 2:38 a.m., edge of space, another cosmic trip. And another musical journey. I love the angle of Saturn. It's giving us some great views on the 8. So lucky. Hopping back in here. Fantasy is asking me. One second, let me lower this. All right, so the Clues, the John Cloud Van Dams have left, and we got like a really clear shot of the moon. This is camera direct to scope, and I don't know if y'all are getting this on the stream, but sometimes, like when I speak, it's really loud at the beginning of words, and I don't mean to do that. So I hope it's not super annoying. It's very punchy. I'm a silly mic. All right. Either way, I want to answer this question. Let's see. Fantasy Ecstasy says, how do I feel about energy being the sixth sense? Like a person with positive energy you gravitate towards. Like how something is too hot, you don't touch it. Someone you feel is negative, you avoid. Well, not everybody does that, right? A lot of people go towards negativity or gravitate towards that, so to speak. I feel like there's a range of all sorts of different interactions with both types of energies. And then energy being the sixth sense, I think it's more so that like yeah, if you want to say that our five senses and then, beyond that. But what is energy, right? In terms of what we know through relativistic thinking, energy is defined in certain ways. But to me, could be defined differently. One way is in terms of these frames of reference that we experience from moment to moment, like things ticking on, this one moment, this moment, this moment. The energy and the momentum of that through this conscious field could be deemed energy. Sorry, was that convoluted? A little bit, I'm sure. But I don't know if it's a sense necessarily. I think a quick question to oneself makes it all a little bit more clear or crazy. So if you imagine, like, who made your eyeballs, right? Like, who made your lungs or legs? Did you? Did your parents? Did, like, something else physically make them? Or are you imagining that you have a body? So if you really ponder that kind of deep thinking, you ponder that question, and you have some deep thinking around that topic of, like, asking yourself the harder questions. Did you make your brain? Did you decide where everything goes in terms of your organs? Or did something else decide that? So that's where, this idea of, like, what is space, what is consciousness, what is energy, what is the shape of the world, I think it really comes back to, like, wait, the answer, of course, is you did it. Nothing else made your eyeballs. You made your eyeballs. And, who is you? Exactly, Ellie. Clues. Raging clues. So yeah, that's one of those things where when I was studying, or now that I still study all this scientific shit, if you really go into metaphysical and philosophical thinking and you try and imagine, like, wait, like, am I breathing? How do I know how to do these things? What is inherent knowledge? What is genetic code? What is ancestry? What is it physically? Not, like, what is it in terms of describing it? And what it could be physically are these plasma shells. And I haven't really heard, even popular science doesn't claim to any physical manifestation of memory. They say it's in the gray matter, right? What does that even mean? Silent Murmur says, privately funded Princeton studies have proven telepathy exists like the sixth sense / dimension. Well, I've been talking about Rupert Sheldrake for a while, and Rupert Sheldrake has done experiments in telepathy to prove that it's real, and I agree, it is real. The way it's real, though, is because of this field structure. And he calls this the morphic resonance field. So these layers, I mean, I agree, but to me, like, ooh, it's late and I'm trying to stay focused here. Okay. So Rupert Sheldrake thinks that these layers have morphic resonance. So Chladni patterns or cymatics patterns. And Eileen McCusick says these are loose charged plasma. And really, whatever it is, the moon sort of has an aura or a memory of what it was from day to day. And it retains that by re-experiencing itself from moment to moment and staying the moon. Same thing with every particle, same thing with every person. Hoo-wee, I got really tired for a second. I need to stretch, get some air over here. Maybe they're zapping my brain. But anyway, telepathy is definitely real because it's all connected bubbles. I'm going to show a quick image here before I take a break, but I found this image of bubbles. There are a lot of images of bubbles, but here's a very simple way of looking at things. So bubble packing. And you see they're all creating these boundary layers. Hyperboloid, nested hyperboloid, craters on the moon, humans interacting, cells, cultures, planets connected, stars, nebula, quasars, language, probably the way we see things from here to here, like this is how things are completely interconnected. Spooky action at a distance or quantum entanglement through this type of reach makes more sense than space is empty and electrically neutral. Ooh, it gets intense. Trying to do so many tasks at once. All right, rolling into 3 a.m. here. The views are just ridiculous, so I'm going to stay with it for a little bit longer, but I'm getting sleepy. Let's do some flip it for the edge, because it's right here.
sorry. Oh, babe, I'm not sorry. I keep on pulling you back from the edge, but I got nothing to say or defend myself, so I'm sorry. Oh, man, I'm not really sorry. I keep on pulling myself back from the edge, but I got nothing real to say for myself, but I'm sorry. Oh, babe, I'm not sorry. I keep on pulling you back from the edge, but I got nothing to say or defend for myself, so I'm sorry. Man, I'm not really sorry. Oh, wild wizard, into the blackness we break. Fly your blue heart to cast all the shadows away. Oh, wild wizard, into the darkness we drink. Fly, young sweetheart, in the host of the shadows vibrate. I was stolen by the rock star. Don't know what they're killing for. Staring up at the familiar lights, enormous. Don't make me pay. Of course, don't wanna live another day. Of course, what does it all mean? Is it all just one bad dream? I'm trying to forgive, knocking my lips to break them apart. You're down into orbit, sparkle and tricks to sweet and sport. Dying to forget, eyes of the world, don't let it go cold. Stuck in this orbit, sinking the coil, darling, just break my heart anymore. I can't take it. I believe it, I do. I can't take it. Where does this feeling come from? Where do I get the right to ask such outrageous questions? Where does this feeling get me? How do I know it's right to ask such crazy questions? Where will this feeling get me? Oh, where will this feeling get me? Now I know I have the right to ask those outrageous questions. But I'm trying to forgive, knocking those lips to break them apart. I'm trying to orbit, sparkle and tricks to sweet sport. Dying to forgive, eyes of the world, just let it go.
that's it for me. I'm cooked. Put a fork in it. It was fun today. I'm gonna close it out with this shot of Jupiter. Thanks so much. Have an excellent day tomorrow. And I don't know, I might take a break, but might keep the streak going. We'll see. But yeah, it's been an awesome streak up to this full moon. Incredible night. Blessed with these great skies. Awesome vibes. Thanks to all the new people who showed up. Please check out the archives and the description of the video for more links. Thanks to all the old peeps. You know who you are. And thanks for sticking by me for so long and staying throughout all these long-ass shows. I super appreciate it. Let's close it out with a very short one. I think this is the right one. No, that's not the right one. I need to crash because I am wiped. I don't know, it just hits me sometimes like 3 hours into a show. I'm just like, okay, that's it. Done. Toast. But it's got to close out on the right type of song. This is the right one. Much love, everybody. Stay wise, stay kind. Share the video if you like. And I'll see you soon on the next space trip. Peace.